My advice or the skill is to be willing to learn the procedures just as a provider was. You don't have to, and you obviously as a non-physician or non-provider can't administer these services, but you've got to be able to talk about them, educate them. You got to know everything about the services that you offer.
This is the Aesthetics Growth Podcast.
Today on the Aesthetics Growth Podcast, it's Bref. I'm back again and super excited to welcome Ashley James to the show today. Ashley is someone who really has expansive experience within the aesthetics industry. We're really excited for her to share her knowledge, share her stories today. She's the founder and CEO of Derm Aesthetic Consulting Group with over 25 years experience within aesthetics. She's helped hundreds of med spas, of practice owners to really build stronger businesses, to create real plans, real growth, and to avoid some of the costly mistakes that can pop up when growing a business. Ashley's been developing and nurturing teams. And if you're serious about growing your practice the right way and learning from an expert, then this episode is for you. Ashley, super excited to have you here. Welcome to the Aesthetics Growth Podcast.
Thank you so much, Bref. I'm so excited to be here. This is such an opportunity to get to speak with you.
Loving it. Well, I'm super excited to dive in because 25 years in any industry is about 200 dog years. And so you've experienced, so much while not only growing your businesses, but helping others to grow theirs. And what would be really helpful for anybody who doesn't know you perhaps is to maybe just take us back a little bit to the synopsis on your story, Ashley, how you got started within the aesthetics industry.
Yeah. Well, it was a really long time ago. I was very fortunate at a very young age to know exactly what I wanted to do. I was initially going to be a nurse. I was in nursing school and had kind of an epiphany moment where I realized this was not my cup of tea. I wanted to help people, but I didn't want to be around kind of the other side of nursing where, you're dealing with a lot of sickness. Was doing some rounds where I had become very attached to a patient that had passed over the weekend and I didn't handle it very well emotionally. And so it was kind of a pivotal moment in my career where I decided I needed to do a shift. I wanted to be able to help people, but I wasn't really sure how. And ended up running into a woman that owned a day spa in California. And she was actually a neighbor of mine and invited me to a convention that I attended with her. And it was kind of in that moment that I realized, oh my gosh, this is what I need to be doing. So I transferred schools, moved myself across the country, and changed my major from nursing to business. And then at the same time, got my aesthetics license and started down that path. Very early on, I realized I was addicted to technology. I love laser modalities. I love the industry. I love just being able to take somebody who's feeling really insecure about their skin and transform it and just watch them evolve into a more confident person. And was working for a doctor and came into work one day and I was terminated. And I was terminated because he had sold the practice and the new owners thought I was paid too much. And I think I remember making kind of a little snarky comment like, well, I was the one that made the revenue, so good luck. Marched
Okay.
myself over to the doctor that I had previously worked for and said, what's going on? I wish you would have told me you were selling because I would have bought the business. And he kind of looked at me upside down. He's like, here I am, this, 22-year-old, like, what are you talking about? I just said, this is what I want to do eventually. He says, well, I didn't know that. And I said, of course not. Why would I give you all my secrets? I'm going to be your competitor one day. Long story short, I didn't want to go work for a competitor at that time. So I started putting my own business plan together. And a few short months later, I opened up my first business, turned that business into a multi-million-dollar practice within the first 18 months to 2 years. And then grew it, sold it, started another one, grew it, sold it. My last practice, I owned 4 practices throughout my career. My last practice, I decided, it's time to be a consultant. So sharing my knowledge on how to grow practices, taking what I've learned through an ever-changing industry with compliance, rules, regulations, evolving technologies. This is where I'm at. And looking back, it's interesting because it's not normal for someone to start a business, sell it, start, sell. But I think it was God's way of seasoning me for what I'm doing right now is, helping people start their businesses, helping people launch their businesses, kind of navigating through the challenges of business. And I love I mean, my husband calls me a serial entrepreneur. So being a consultant, this is like the best thing for me. I love business.
I love that. And so much there because you said a few things are super relevant. Number one, at the rate that you grew those businesses, grew them, sold them, went on to obviously start your consulting, helping other business owners, other medical spas, aesthetic practices do just that. And I think you mentioned, or what I was seeing there, is there's kind of a blueprint. You replicated success multiple times, and now you're helping other practices to do that. And sometimes it can seem like business owners, it's about owners, they start with sometimes more of a dream than a blueprint. And
Mhm.
that energy can get them off the ground, but then there's inevitably, things can happen or they can go in the wrong direction without having a real plan. And I think it's kind of like, if you buy the IKEA furniture, it's like buying it and trying to assemble it without the instructions. And you have that, that little IKEA guy, as annoying as he looks when he's getting everything right, it's really important to have those instructions along the way. So, Ashley, what would you say are, some of the core components of those plans, or having a real plan, and the importance of strategic planning when it comes to growing your business? And in this case, maybe we're talking about the medical spas and the practices that you've built, and the way that you help other practices to do that too.
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, I definitely can tell you that with every business that I own, they were just a little bit different. My first one I opened when I was 23 years old, and I was like your typical owner. I'm going to go in, I'm going to make revenue, I'm going to kind of fly by the seat of my pants. I didn't have a business. I mean, I had a business plan, but I didn't really know my numbers, and I didn't have any operational cash set aside. I just, I knew what I was capable of as far as a provider goes, and I was just going to kind of build and pay bills and do things like that as I went. And that was a very, very difficult way to grow a business. And unfortunately, I see a lot of owners do that is they rent a space, they jump in and they don't know their numbers. My second, third, and fourth business, I had a business plan and I knew my numbers going into it. So much easier. There was much more strategy behind it. And so that would be what I would say is the first thing. You've got to know your numbers before you do this. If you're opening a business, you got to have a plan, you got to have a financial plan and a pro forma, because if you don't, how do you actually know what your expenses are going to be? What are your expectations? Are you going to just make, you know, $70,000 the first month? It's unlikely. And there's so many hidden costs that go into running a med spa that a lot of owners don't realize. They don't understand that, for example, Botox and filler is about a 50% direct cost. So if you're going to make $10,000 in injectables, $5,000 of that is your cost. And if you don't have that
Mhm.
calculated into things, you're going to go upside down very quickly. So I'm a big believer in the numbers. Know what your expectations are for revenue, know what the industry trends are, and have realistic numbers. And that's a lot where we come in, the 20 plus years of experience where we know what the numbers look like and what the averages are to provide really realistic expectations so that our clients are prepared when they go into it.
I love that. You nailed it with expectations. Having that knowledge, having reasonable expectations, having a plan. Similarly, when I'm talking to med spa owners, sometimes just the education in itself and educating them on, what's happening in the marketplace. And sometimes, I'm not sure if you agree, but there's things that people will want to hear, but what's so important is what they need to know when moving forward,
Mhm.
because it's about timing, it's about strategy, it's about understanding the competitive forces, the forces in the marketplace. And I think what we see is too many times people will jump, they'll move forward without that plan. And then to your point, if you're not knowing your margins, if you don't have strategic plan in place to perhaps, build a referral base, build that word of mouth, which devices to buy, or what to buy, what not to buy, when to buy it. So I know there's a lot we're going to cover here in the conversation. What is there any particular stories or examples that you can think of those types of conversations that you had, Ashley, where it was maybe eye opening, or you had to deliver that what you need to know versus what they maybe were expecting or wanted to know?
I would say the majority of clients that work with me, when they schedule a strategy call and we're kind of sharing ideas, they're sharing their vision with me, and I'm kind of going through the process of what opening a med spa really looks like. I always ask them what they think the investment is going to be. And I would say 9 out of 10 times they are off by quite a bit. I've had owners who come thinking that a med spa is going to cost $100,000 to open, some that will say $700,000. And the reality of it is that usually those customers are just looking at the hard numbers, the rent, maybe the cost of the employees, or maybe they'll throw a few $1,000s into marketing, but they're not understanding that there's so much more. What is your renovations going to look like? If you're getting tenant improvements, how's that wrapped up into your lease? What's the insurance, malpractice, cost of deliverables, marketing, and really the ramp up phase. The ramp up phase is having enough cash flow to get you from point A to I'm making money and I'm making a profit. And most every single customer I've run into doesn't allocate for that. So, um, that's probably the one big thing. And then when I have customers that reach out that have already opened and then they open, they're like, oh shit, I didn't do this right. And then they call me. That's kind of where we have to backtrack. Okay, what have you
Mm.
invested? Where are you at? I have to look at their strategy. And usually their strategy and how they're gaining customers is not aligned either.
Okay. Okay. Let's see if we can peel back some of the layers there because there's so many practical tips I'm sure that you can share today from things that you just mentioned, which is number one, before you open those doors, have a plan in place. If you've opened the doors and now you need to figure things out, is you got to look at everything that's going on, all those expenses, the services that you're offering, having a strategic marketing plan in place. And then there's the kind of the pitfalls that people can fall into at those early stages as well. And, we've worked with hundreds of practices ourselves at ClinicGrower, and I know that you have too. And what would you say are some of those, if you were going to categorize them, some of the most frequent mistakes that your clients have made or that you're seeing being made in the market when they're getting those businesses off the ground or trying to grow them, Ashley?
There's two that I see. The first one is, new owners are trying to be budget savvy. So they sometimes will hire cheap employees, um, that really what that equates to is they're inexperienced. They're hiring employees that don't have maybe as much experience because they can afford to hire them with less. And the problem with that is, you got to be able to hit the ground running. In this industry, clients are going to purchase with people and they're going to look for social proof before they ever pick up the phone. So you've got to have
Mhm.
amazing before and after photos. You have to be able to earn your clients' trust through education, through knowledge, through the before and afters. Do they trust that you're going to provide the results that they're looking for? And a lot of that just comes with experience. If you're hiring a nurse, for example, that's very seasoned, that nurse could earn anywhere from 120 to I've seen $180,000 a year. But a newer nurse maybe only $90,000 a year. So I see owners become very attractive to the least experienced providers, and the reality of it is it's not less expensive because you're going to have to pay for training, and then you're going to have that whole gap of from when they're learning to when they're really experienced that could cost you revenue. The second, and probably the most, I wouldn't say popular, but the biggest mistake is when money gets tight, the first thing they cut is marketing. And it never makes sense to me. They look at marketing as an expense when it's really your lifeline, especially during the first 6 months during the ramp up phase. If you're not open and you don't have that social proof and you don't have that experience in the community, your customers don't know you. And so your marketing, your advertising, that's how you gain your social proof. That's how you get your word out. That's how you communicate your brand identity to customers. And so if you cut that lifeline, then your leads start coming in slower, or you may not have the right quality lead. It's really funny. In Iowa, the field of dreams, if you build it, they will come. And so many owners think that that's what's going to happen when they open up a med spa. And it's just not the case. There's so much that goes into getting to that point where you're making 70, 80, six figures a month and more. But that marketing piece is so important. And if you need to cut your costs or you're trying to be more budget savvy, that's the last place to cut your costs.
Hey, so quick message, don't get right back to the show. This episode is brought to you by ClinicGrower, my growth marketing agency that helps medical spas and aesthetic practices to scale sustainably with multi-channel marketing, with smart automation and real-world conversion strategies. Now, I know that might sound a little bit vague, and that's because growing your business isn't really a one-size-fits-all formula. Every practice is going to be different, and so should your marketing plan too. So at ClinicGrower, we offer a completely free marketing audit, a growth plan, that's customized for you and for your business. This is going to include a full analysis of your current presence, your current marketing, your local competition, and also a roadmap, a growth plan designed to help you to attract more high quality patients and to increase your revenue and to grow your business. So if you want to scale with clarity and confidence, just head over to clinicgrower.com/schedule to book your free consultation. That's clinicgrower.com/schedule. Now back to the show.
Yeah. So much you said that resonated, the field of dreams, especially. And it really interesting, actually, what you said with the hiring piece. Don't cheap out on it, right? We know hiring can be a struggle for a lot of businesses. Are there any tactical tips that you would give to anybody who's maybe they're hiring right now, they're looking to break through to that next level, or they're at a stage where they're solo when they're looking to make that first hire? Kind of when to do it, what sort of tools perhaps you recommend or use to help people to do it correctly? Because we know the cost of a bad hire can fire. It's better to hire slow and fire fast and really get that right person in the right seat. Any particular advice you'd give to anybody listening about that?
Yes, absolutely. We do see a lot of owners that bring on too much too quickly. And what I mean by that is, let's say you're open and you're doing lasers and injectables and let's say wellness. You really only
Mm.
need an NP, an esthetician, and maybe a nurse and a medical director. But I see a lot of owners that are hiring kind of everybody. They may open with a staff of 7 or 8, and that's really just too much. You want to get your books filled about 75% of the time before you're ready to hire. So if you have a nurse injector, she needs to be booked, 75% of the time, at least 3 weeks on a consistent basis in advance before, okay, it's time to hire another nurse injector.
Mm.
Same thing for the esthetician, same thing for the NP, and so on and so on. And if you follow that roadmap of being booked 75% of the time before you hire, then you can assure yourself that you're going to be able to afford that. The other thing with hiring is, I don't know if you know this or if you've talked with other people about this, but sometimes the way that the compensation model is not attainable. And this goes back into compliance. If the business has to be owned by a doctor first and foremost. You have to have an MSO or an MSA structure if you're not a physician that owns the practice. And we can get into that later, but you cannot pay your employees commission. So when I'm hiring people for my clients, I do run into a lot of nurses or estheticians that are like, I get paid 40% or 30% of my injectables, and that is absolutely not compliant because it's the practice of
Mm.
medicine. And so it's considered fee splitting. So you have to make sure that your compensation structures, for one, your business can afford and that they align with the actual production that the employee is producing for you. So, I like to say essentially, they should be earning, 4 to 6 times the amount of their salary. I always recommend a nurse to be paid a pretty generous base salary and then do bonuses based on KPI goals rather than per service, per revenue, because that's technically illegal.
Yeah, I love that. We as part of the tools that we normally provide scorecards, etc., and the bonuses, hitting those milestones that are there for those win-win situations that are developed once the business is growing, once the providers, once the injectors are actually producing. So I love what you said there. Any particular, pitfalls, things that people shouldn't do when it comes to hiring, things that you've noticed through your experience, and any practical tips that you could share?
That they shouldn't do. Hmm.
Yeah.
Well, sometimes you hire a bad egg. Sometimes, especially working in a med spa where there is likely a lot of women, there can be a lot of drama. If you have a team and you have somebody who is maybe creating drama, maybe has a negative attitude, my advice is to cut them sooner than later because that can be a cancer to your practice. I actually just had a recent situation with one of my own clients. We launched in August and we hired what we thought was the dream team. Based on experience, it really was. But we had a nurse practitioner who she was just kind of a negative Nelly. And there was a respect issue that she had with the owner because the owners were not physicians. And it quickly filtered down into the rest of the staff and became a
Mm.
very toxic environment very quickly. With our advice, we terminated her, and immediately, I mean, literally within a few days, the entire tone and environment shifted. So, if you're sensing that there's something wrong, if you are sensing that there's drama, you really need to investigate where that's coming from and get rid of it, because this industry is about helping people, uplifting people, making people feel confident. And if you have someone that's kind of behind the scenes, not believing in your vision and not, supporting one another internally, they're not the right fit for your practice.
Right. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah, some recent examples as well of what you described as those toxic environments, and they can be quite lethal, especially perhaps as you maybe said, if there's owners that maybe they're not there every day and they've entrusted in team members to run the day to day, that can be the invisible hand that really stifles growth and can, as you said, just really be a toxic environment. And so it's the to do there really is to, if you notice that, right, I think number one is having really good communication with all team members, having a system where people can communicate and there's that open environment to do it. And then those tough decisions when it's time to let somebody go is to do that. And there's, as you just said, in those environments where you remove that toxicity, then that's where teams band together and you could be
Mhm.
surprised at what happens when you remove that bad apple from the bunch, right?
Right. Right. I would also say, team building is very important. So, if you have a negative egg, get rid of them, but also, you know, having internal competitions and having weekly meetings and doing things that, or structuring compensation in a way that everyone is required to work together for the overall goal are things that I would also recommend.
I definitely don't want to let go of what you said earlier about sometimes the first cut that practices make can be that marketing piece. We see it too, at ClinicGrower when people are looking to make changes. It could be an item that pops up on the agenda, and a lot of the time it comes down to again expectations for what marketing is, what it should do. At the foundation of that, I think, is one thing you mentioned a little bit earlier, which is simple things before and after. Reviews, having a really good foundation. Marketing doesn't always have to mean the Facebook ad, but there's so many things to it. And would love to hear about, how you coach and how your systems work for practices to make sure they have those solid foundations in place, the befores and afters. And then I'm more than happy to nerd out about the marketing piece as well.
Yeah, yeah, I could definitely nerd out about marketing. Well, I think there's a lot, like, again, it's multifaceted. So when I'm launching a practice, I always start the marketing piece a good 6 to 8 weeks before the launch. And a
Mm,
lot of my customers are thinking, why? Well, really, nobody knows who you are. So we've got to show them the brand. We've got to show them the brand identity. We have to start getting your customers and your community excited about what's to come and what you're all. Like I said, in this industry, people purchase with people. There's med spas on every corner. So how are you going to set yourself apart from your competitors? You do that through your knowledge, through your education, what you're about. Your social media and your marketing is a way to do that. It's a way to educate your consumer on, this is my experience, this is what I'm able to do, this is a little bit about my personality. And I go into, I'm going to nerd out when it comes to sales and strategy, but a customer, in order to really earn their business, you have to meet them at their two pillars of purchase. The pillars of purchase is, one, it's an emotional decision, and then it's a logical decision. And in this industry, the majority of their decision is emotional. They're coming
yeah.
to you first and foremost because something's wrong. They want to feel better. There's a goal, like there's a why. And it's usually tied to an emotion. And then the logic is, do I like you? Are you educated? Do I trust you? Is this a good investment? Is this a smart investment? And so that process starts with your marketing. Do they like what you're about? Do they like the mission of the business? Do they believe that you have services that are going to provide that solution that they're looking for? So the marketing in a new business really starts like I said, 6 to 8 weeks before you launch. And then that should really just be about your brand. And then a good 3 weeks before you actually open, now it's like heavy lead gen. Let's offer a promo. Let's offer some type of incentive. I'm not a big believer in discounts. I think that cheapens a brand. Do things like, first 20 customers get this, or
Yep.
with every package you purchase.
Mm,
And marketing should really tell a story as well. Why do you want this? What solution is it providing to you? Because at the end of the day, the discount shoppers are not going to be your bread and butter. It's going to be the clients that really understand that this is a process and that this is maintenance and it's kind of long term, and they see it as an investment in themselves, and ultimately will give that investment to you. And then I do believe that the first 6 months is where you need to spend the most money when it comes to marketing. A lot of heavy ad spend, Google, Facebook, Instagram, before and after photos. Um, you know, an educational corner like, hey, today it's Tuesday teaching. This is what I want to tell you about Botox, or Fab Friday. This is what we learned this week. Here's our before and afters. I think that your marketing has to do a bunch of different things, not just one.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I always liken it to the spaceship, the rocket taking off. You've really got to put a lot of momentum into it. You burn a lot of energy in the beginning, and we'll talk about the important piece in a bit about the marketing initially. And I agree with what you said. It's about setting that foundation. There's got to be a brand, there's got to be an identity, there's got to be a story to tell to draw the people that you want to attract in. And with that, as we know, there's an ideal patient avatar, there's planning, there's actually having a plan in place, what type of marketing to do, the type of story that the owners, the providers are going to tell. And then you kind of hit that gasoline with the ad spend. But it's like, gasoline is going to get you very far if you've got a bicycle. So you got to have that right foundation with the car to pour the gas in. And I think you mentioned, Ashley, like normally you're doing about 3 weeks before the practice opens, the lead gen to get leads flowing, right? And then so with that, you've got the leads coming in, you've got the foundation, and you've got those 6 months where it's let's go. Let's talk a little bit about the congruency then with, okay, we've got the marketing machine is working here, the leads are coming in. Now, what type of sales systems need to be in place to sell and to retain clients so that you're not continuously having to be in the hamster wheel?
Yeah, yeah. So sales is my jam. I guess all of it is. I just love business. But when it comes to sales, I'm a nerd. My mom used to always say you could sell ice to an Eskimo. And I'm like, it's really just educating the Eskimo on what this igloo looks like and what this ice is all about. It's all education. That's really what it is. So you're right. You can dump all the money into the marketing to get all the leads, to get the customers. But then if you don't execute a proper strategy to earn their business after they're interested, you're going to fail. So I actually have a book coming out called Convert More Systems, or I'm sorry, Convert More Consults. It's a system that I have been teaching for about 15 years, and it's my own system on how to do consultations. But it's really going back to the patient journey. It's going back to the two pillars of purchase that I just briefly
Mm,
discussed. But at the end of the day, your customer has a really big investment to make. So they have to know you. They have to learn about you. They have to trust you. They have to learn about all the solutions that you have available to help them get to their goals. And so the consultation process is really where the rubber meets the pavement. If I have a customer that reaches out to us and says, AJ, I'm just doing 1.2 million a year. I've plateaued. I can't get any further. I don't know what I'm doing wrong. I would say 80% of the time when I go in and do a SWOT, they're not doing consultations right. They're doing consultations in exam rooms. They're about 10 to 15 minutes long, and that's wrong.
mm.
That is not enough time to get to know your customer. That's not enough time for them to get to know you. It's not enough time to really lay out all the options that you have available to them and to customize a treatment plan that meets their expectations. That sales process is, you've got to be likable. You've got to be educational from the very beginning of the phone call. When someone calls, have your attention to that caller. Ask them questions, get them familiar with your practice, invite them in for a consultation, make that experience really pleasant. When they come in, greet them, stand up, shake their hand, show them that your attention is on them, and then have a full consultation. And what I mean by full consultation, a good 45 minutes to an hour. If you want this customer to invest six, seven, eight, $10,000 into your practice, maybe get on a membership program and keep coming back, isn't that time valuable? Isn't that
Mm.
hour worth it if you're going to earn that business long term? I think so.
Yeah,
So the sales
100%.
process is very, very important. And we teach a lot about the sales strategy. One of the things I always hear providers say is, I don't want to be a car salesperson. I don't like sales. But really, sales, like I said, is just education. And it's your job as a provider to educate your clients on all the solutions available to them. So it's really just a conversation.
Yeah, so many practices, I've seen it time and time again, they tend to start a business without a plan or go for the offer for the special without having a really good consultative process. And to your point, that's where you develop the relationship with the patient. What would you, for anybody listening who maybe said, "Ooh, I'm on the former, I'm doing a quick, 15 minutes and we're injecting and then we're saying goodbye and then we're wondering why the patient didn't come back." Three things that they might be able to do to change that system or change that process. Because for some of them, it might, it's going to mean some systems changes. Any two or three tips that you might provide to someone who needs to make that change today?
Yeah. So the first step would be to have your consultation in a dedicated consultation room. There's something about the psychology of a sale. So think about it this way: if a patient schedules Botox and they are taken into an exam room, their mind is that I'm doing Botox. They're not really open to hearing any additional suggestions. But when you flip the switch and you put them in a consultation room and you let them know that, hey, we're going to do a consultation first because we're a medical facility and we want to make sure that we're learning the ins and outs of everything that you're looking for, then and then we can do the Botox afterwards. It just switches their mindset a little bit. So now they become open to suggestions. And I've seen that transform practices, just changing the environment that the consultations are provided in.
Mm. I'll see it time and time again. The new patient, the whole experience from when they come into the practice, what they're seeing, what that, as you mentioned, the friendliness, what the warmth, the welcome, having that new patient consultation. And then you mentioned the used car salesperson. That's obviously a thing nobody wants to be perceived as. How do you then coach practices on not doing that? The educational piece, the ongoing piece, which is it's not just one script or one framework, but there's more of a culture, I think, of, to the point that you mentioned, asking the right questions, being truly interested in the patient. I'd love to hear, what you might share with our audience as far as what they could do to continue that experience for the patient to enhance the practice of sales.
I really just think, if you have a provider, if you are a provider that's listening and sales intimidates you, just flip your mindset to the fact that all you're doing is educating. You're educating them on all the solutions available to them. You've got to be able to ask them questions. What are you looking for? What is your goal? How is that going to make you feel if we achieve this goal for you? Don't be afraid to ask what the investment is. Are we working with $1,000? Are we working with $2,000? What is the investment you're willing to make into yourself? Sometimes you'll have a client that says, I don't really know. And, they kind of want to be coy about it. I always turn around and say, well, look, the reason I'm asking is not because I want to max your budget out. I want to make this feel good for you. I want this investment into you to feel good. And if I develop a treatment plan that's $15,000 and your budget's $2,000, that's not going to feel good. If you can be open with us about how, and what you're willing to invest in yourself, then I can develop a program that really meets those expectations to make sure that we get you what you need at a plan that fits comfortably into your budget. And then, I think that's probably where that conversation takes place. But asking them questions, you have to kind of figure out their why. You have to know what their budget is. You have to know what their timeline is, what their lifestyle is. If someone lives in Denver and they hike all the time, you probably want to make sure that if you do an ablative treatment, they've got, space to have that downtime. So
Mhm.
it's a conversation.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. And on the conversation piece, the initial visit, like that first impression, right? And we'll hear from practices a lot of the time where they'll get caught, they'll get stuck, is on the patient coming back, not booking that repeat visit, just kind of messing that part up. How do you help practices to do that? Or what advice would you give to some of our listeners to do that confidently, just to make it an inherent part of what happens as part of the process?
I mean, it's all about developing a treatment plan. You should never be doing consultations and just doing one treatment at a time, because really, if they're doing Botox, they're going to need to come back every 90 days. If they're doing filler, they're going to be coming back every year. And so it's aligning those expectations with the client to make sure that they understand that this is an ongoing situation. Or maintenance. Maybe you're doing hydrofacials every month, and here's why. But at the end of the day, I love memberships. So, doing a rewards program or something that gives the client a little nugget of discount or a little nugget of value for, being at your practice and coming back on a regular basis. I love doing rewards programs where they get maybe like points every time they purchase, or they get discounts every time they purchase. And so if you have a rewards program where maybe your Botox is, 11 a unit instead of 14 a unit, that would be enticing for a client to come back. So again, it just goes back to that initial consultation, outlining the plan and how, what, when, and why you're recommending these things. And then making sure that when they're checking out, you're scheduling that follow up appointment. The fortunes in the follow up, I always say that. So, communicate with them, check in on them, see how the results are going, and make sure that you schedule that appointment before they leave.
Awesome. Awesome. The fortune's in the follow. That's one of my favorite expressions as well. On that piece, on the fortune in the follow-up, we've got so many tools and different strategies available today. What are some of the tools that you'll use to practice or advise them on to make sure that there is a good cadence of follow-up with patients who perhaps they have a life event they cancel, or after their initial visit there's just a really good journey, a communication journey for that new patient?
So, I'm sure you guys have some type of a lead management system. We do as well. We call ours Business Builder. And that's a really great way to kind of make sure that no client is left behind. You can set in automations that you can program to outline, like, hey, we haven't seen you in 90 days, or hey, it's 60 days from your last Botox. Let's go ahead and get your next appointment. Just little reminders, things like that. And this sounds really cheesy, but it works so well. And maybe this is because, I'm a lot older, and back in my generation, this is what you always did, but handwritten note cards. A lot of the time, practices will send emails or text messages, things like that. But think about the last time you got a handwritten postcard. I mean, it just made you feel so special. It made you feel like someone actually took time to reach out, and that is so valuable in this space. It could be a reminder card of their Botox appointment, or just appreciation that, hey, I really appreciate the opportunity to earn your business. Valuable little nuggets of words like that. How you word things. Hey, I'm really excited to earn your business, or I value your business, or it was so great, and I love the fact that you're trusting me with your journey. These are all great things. Again, this is relationship building in this industry. So the fortune and follow up is really about that. You're nurturing a relationship. Whether you do it in automations to help manage it, like automatic emails at certain times, birthday emails, reminders. But also, what I always tell my clinics and the employees is call them. If
Yeah.
they've come into the practice and they've had Botox, call them 7 days later. How are things going? If there is an issue, you now have the opportunity to fix it and resolve it, rather than letting the client just think, "Oh, this is really shitty Botox." It,
Right.
it it prevents kind of the negative, if there's a negative that happens, but then it also just reinforces the relationship. So call them, send postcards, do some type of automatic follow-ups with emails. Do not send an email every single week. They will spam you. But fortunes in the follow-up. Have some customer appreciation events. I always recommend at least 2 a year. That's always helpful to get people back into the clinic that maybe haven't scheduled consistently.
I love that. I was going to talk about events because we're at the time we're recording, obviously heading into the holidays. And some of the favorite things that we love to do for our clients too are helping them to host events, because it's people coming together. And at the end of the day, whether there's a fortune in the follow up through automations and amazing technology and equipment, everybody's in the people business, serving people in the marketplace. And what better way than to get people into the building, into the office, to meet and greet, maybe have a glass of wine, and then in a really fun way, get to be educated and have fun
Mhm.
and to build that connection with the practice. What are some of the favorite events that you like to do with your practice, Ashley? Or what is there certain times of the year that you really like to drive those events?
I love grand opening events. I
Mm,
typically recommend those about 90 days after they open. Most of my clients experience a six-figure revenue night.
awesome.
Love, like, if you have a rewards program or membership program, having membership community events, or like Botox and Bubbly, where it's a small group of women that come in. The host gets discount on their Botox, and they invite all their girlies in, and things like that. But I love ugly sweater parties at Christmas. Typically, like for a clinic, you don't typically see that, but I love having ugly sweater contests for the med spa, and whatever client is voted the ugliest sweater gets like a free skincare kit or things like that. And it's really fun to do that. At this time of the year, because a lot of your vendors are giving you bundles and holiday deals as
Yeah.
well. And a lot of these vendors will support some of the discounts that you're offering during those events. I also love to do like Botox bingo, where you have you have a vendor in and you literally play bingo, and whoever wins, they win a BBL or they win a Moxie treatment or maybe a year of hydrofacial. Clients really, really take to that. And again, it gets them in your practice. They remember they're having fun. It's not just an event where they walk around room to room, like they're actually playing a game or they're having a contest about whose sweater is the ugliest, and they plan for it. They invite their girlfriends. So I love events where there's more interaction than just, go to this room, listen to this vendor, here's our promo, this. I mean, you got to get them involved. You got to make sure they have fun.
Right, right, for sure. We spoke about it earlier, that the identity, the personality of the practice, right? And there's ways in which you can do it and engage. I love the ugly sweater contest as well. And the Botox bingo, they're tremendous. I want to change it up a little bit to, because I know we could talk forever and you've got so much knowledge to share. I love to do what's called rapid fire round. So no overthinking, just gonna hit you with some questions. And first question I would have is, what are some of the biggest mistakes that you see practices make when it comes to making an initial investment?
They buy laser equipment too soon. So like the first month
Okay.
they may spend 250 on a device and they don't have the clientele yet, or they haven't marketed for what's coming.
The kind of if you buy it, they will come scenario.
Unfortunately, I've seen a lot of clinics open where they buy multiple devices, $250,000 or more, thinking that if I have all these devices, then I'm going to thrive. And the laser reps are really good at selling that dream that if you buy this laser, you're going to make all this money. And that's just not the case. There's strategy behind making money.
Right. Love it. Yeah, I agree 100%. What about one hire that changes everything?
That's tough because it depends on what type of business you have. I would say your injector that can do a full glow up. Not just doing, I want one area of Botox where they can literally do an entire facial contouring with filler and Botox. I mean, your injector should be selling anywhere from 1,500 to, $5,000 per client. So, Botox is your introductory drug in this industry. So I think having a really strong injector that can consult and relate and kind of connect with patients is probably one of the most important hires.
Mm,
The
yeah, that
second,
sounds awesome. Get
the
the Swiss Army knife. Number two, free bonus, everybody.
second is your patient coordinator. A lot of people kind of discount the receptionist or the patient coordinator, but they're your first point of contact. So they have to be extremely knowledgeable to convert that lead, that caller into an appointment.
Right. Okay. Okay. Love that. Love that. Some more secrets under the hood there as well. How about when it comes to, is there any one skill that you think is underestimated in an owner? Something that from your experience working with lots of owners, any particular skill that is perhaps underestimated in them successfully building their business and leading a team?
I have a really good example. I launched a clinic last November of last year, and the owners were husband and wife, and they were from the marketing industry, but they did different types of marketing. And so they were non physician owners. And a year later, I mean, they're killing it. So, really, my advice or the skill is to be willing to learn the procedures just as a provider was. You don't have to, and you obviously, as a non physician or non provider, can't administer these services, but you've got to be able to talk about them, educate them. You got to know everything about the services that you offer. So, that skill set, whether you're a physician, a non physician, NP, like you have to know all of your services inside and out. You have to be able to conduct a consultation.
Powerful, powerful. Back to the education piece, so important. How about on the education piece or advice? What would you say? Is there anything that stands out as the best piece of advice that you've received that has served you well through your career?
Gosh, the best advice I've gotten.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's a tough one too.
Didn't say it'd be easy.
I would say in this industry, things change quickly. So don't be complacent. Always look ahead. What are your competitors doing? What new technologies are coming out? AI is huge right now. What can help make my job easier and be ahead of the game, kind of navigate what you think the shift is going to be. That can be very difficult, but sometimes you get so busy running your practice that you're just kind of in your own little world. And then before you know it, your competitors have this, this, and this, and you're like, I didn't even know about that. So, there is something to be said about being kind of up to date on technologies, techniques, and industry information. So invest in that. Send your employees to training. And training is one of the biggest and best investments a practice owner can make into their practice every single year. And that comes from making sure that you have the up-to-date information, the newest technology, new trends, because your clients are already learning about it and they're going to be looking for clinics that have that too.
Awesome. Great share. And just a follow on would be, what are you seeing as some of the trends that owners must keep up with right now, or some of those hottest trends that people can either keep up with, get ahead of, or potentially fall behind on?
You know, this is kind of a technology thing going back to CRMs. There's a lot of, AI answering services now. And, we have it too, but it can be very dangerous. And what I mean by that is going back to people purchase with people. Sometimes these AIs that are responding or even calling your patients, it's very obvious they're AI. And that can feel very disingenuous. So if you're going to be using AI to follow up with leads or to, call patients or do reminder phone calls, be aware that you still need to heavily train that AI. Like ours, the AI is trained to me as how I answer the phone, how I answer questions. It's kind of like
Mm.
DJ in your practice. But a lot of these companies that are coming out with AI, it's not like that. And so if you're going to use AI, it needs to be very, very customized, and don't use it all the time because again, people purchase with people. And if you take that element out of your business, then yeah, that's not a good thing. I don't think.
No, I agree. I think, people, and I think that that's going to be increasingly important, is human verified interactions into the future. Because yes, AI, we use it as a kind of almost that safety net, that fallback, right? Where if there's going to be kind of like a lead lost or a lead leakage in a practice, there's good solutions with AI and with automation. But at least today, it's not there to replace humans. And people are
Mhm.
coming into your practice because they should value the interaction. They're there to build a relationship with someone. I don't see that changing anytime soon. And I think the point you made there is extremely relevant as well, is that you cannot over rely on AI, because that can certainly damage a reputation and kill a relationship before it even starts.
Yeah.
Actually, we've covered so much already. But what else can we cover? Anything else that we haven't discussed that you'd love to share with our audience?
I don't know. I mean, I just love this industry. I love what you guys are doing. I think 2026 is going to be a great year for this industry. I know that this year, some people, some practices felt like a little bit of hesitation and
Mm,
like investing money into themselves. And I think that has a lot to do with the election and politics and things like that. But what I have learned over 2 decades is that this industry is not slowing down at all. And, if you're going to open up a business or even if you have a business and you want to grow, you just have to have strategy. And you have to be able to execute that strategy effectively. And marketing strategy, sales strategy, how you hire, how you train is very, very valuable. Anybody can make $1 million in a med spa, but the ones that are making 10 million and more, that's how they do it. So I'm a nerd when it comes to business. I love startups. I love growth. I love taking a business that's plateaued and then, growing it exponentially. I'm just wired that way. But yeah, I mean, I think next year is going to be a great year. I think wellness is taking off, peptides are taking off, hormone therapy. And so I'm seeing that a lot of med spas are bringing that into their practices, and it's a pretty profitable avenue.
mm. Yeah, we're seeing a lot as well, is certainly from offering the patient as much as you can in order to help them with their not just aesthetic but wellness journey. And so things that you mentioned with the kind of the peptide revolution, if you will, offering those services. Is there anything else that you're seeing when it comes to like technologies or treatments that you see really trending up in 2026?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a laser girl, so I can nerd out when it comes to technology. And Cytron, I love Cytron. They just came out with their new device that has AI on it. And I love that because it measures the amount of heat that's going into the skin, but also kind of dumbs it down for the provider to make sure that every patient is getting the best efficacy of treatment. So I love that. As
Mm,
far as other treatments go, the salmon sperm is a hot one right now
yeah.
with all of that, and amazing results. I mean, if your goal is to look like a glazed donut, that's a great treatment to have. Um, a lot of infusion treatments are really a lot of, I see a lot of clinics being more so as far as maintenance. So just beyond the hydrofacials or the diamond glows, like more like treatment serum infusions, I'm seeing to really start taking off as well. And then hair
Awesome.
restoration
Awesome.
and PRP hair restoration and PRF is huge as well.
Yeah, yeah, lots to be excited for. And your point too, well, there's been sort of some road bumps along the way of 2025, I feel, and we've been, there's been a weird year in a lot of respects with people just not knowing what was coming, and with some obviously changes from an election standpoint, government issues. Is that there's so much momentum within the industry, there's so much demand from a not only an aesthetic standpoint, but that anti-aging standpoint, and really the combination, the integration with more wellness. Very, very exciting times. And I'm super excited that you came on today to share so much knowledge from building multiple businesses, your continued quest to help other practices to grow theirs, everything from the hiring right through to the pitfalls that many practices, shouldn't make. I think anybody listening to this can not only move along the journey to increase their business revenue, but to potentially not lose a couple $100,000 for making some of those investments at stage that they really don't need to. Wow, Ashley, thanks so much. I really appreciate you being on the show today. And I'd love to ask you, for anybody who's listening, what's the best way for them to find out more about what you're doing with Dermaesthetic Group, and to connect with you?
First and foremost, it's been great being on this podcast. I really appreciate the opportunity to connect and network and learn. And I just love being able to speak about the industry. For customers that are interested in learning a little bit more about us, they can go to our website at www.dermaestheticconsulting.com. And they can schedule a strategy call with us, and we can learn kind of their vision, or maybe what issues they're having or solutions they're looking for. Everything we do is custom. Every business is unique. So we always develop custom scope of works for our clients. But we do everything from business plans for us, full startups. We do websites, like you guys do. We do a lot of sales training. That's one of our big ones, and we do a lot of recruiting too. So, yeah, I mean, you can go to our website, or you can give us a call. We'd love to hear from you.
Awesome. Awesome. Ashley, thanks so much for joining and for sharing so much. Really, really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Hey, it's Brett here with ClinicGrower, and I've got a quick favor to ask. If you're loving the Aesthetics Growth podcast, go ahead and hit that like, or hit that subscribe, more importantly, so that we can keep bringing you the best of the industry. I really want this to be impactful and the highest quality, and the best way that you can help us to do that is to hit that like, hit that subscribe. And remember, if you would like to be a guest on the Aesthetics Growth podcast, go to clinicgrower.com/podcast.
This is the Aesthetics Growth Podcast.